to start the recording and just say to everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. And my name is Mary Ann Snow. I'm actually the CEO of Sophaya. Sophaya is producing these executive briefings, which are happening every Friday and have been happening every Friday for the last 9 weeks. This is an event, this executive briefing event is sponsored by the Remote Nation Institute, and our goal is to really provide you with up-to-date information about what's happening right now. It's an extraordinary time with the workplace shutdowns that we've been experiencing as a result of the coronavirus. And this is different than regular remote work. And so as remote work professionals and people who deploy remote work programs on a very large scale, we know the difference between those two things. And so one of the things that we're trying to do right now is trying to share our information, share our knowledge of the best ways to organize yourself and also interact in these environments so that you can take that information back to your organizations, integrate it into your work process, and have a less stressful time during this particularly extraordinary moment that all of us are experiencing. Not remote work, but more a crisis, work from home, enforced isolation situation, which is a little bit different. So as I mentioned before, what I'm going to do is we always start these briefings with a high level topic. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background and briefing about what we're seeing with our clients, what we're seeing in the environment, and just what we're seeing with the landscape, the remote work landscape right at this particular point in time. So I have a few thoughts to share with you, and also just things that I'm recommending that to all of my clients that they should be focusing on right at this particular point in time, based on what we're seeing in this space. And then at the end of those prepared remarks, I will open it up to questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me via chat, and I will absolutely invite you into the conversation and get you into the conversation so that we can get you some good information. So first of all, I do want to thank you, and I also want to thank the Remote Nation Institute for their sponsorship, and also Microsoft, the Microsoft Teams group that has been instrumental in really kind of helping us use the Teams platform as our broadcasting platform for these briefings. It's not a traditional webinar platform. It's a little more intimate, but we chose to do that because we have a lot of people who are evaluating different types of video conferencing tools. And so we wanted to show people what the possibilities are and different ways that you can use these tools and give you a chance to practice, because we think that's really important. So 9 weeks in, folks, we are 9 weeks in. And for different parts of the country, particularly in Washington State, which was really hit hard with COVID very early on in the game, even more so. But 9 weeks of pretty much enforced lockdown, where people are working from home, whether they like it or not, and they're doing it under extreme circumstances. So we wanted to tackle a really interesting, very crucial topic. You know, how do you keep remote spirits up when you're in a situation where your people are feeling fatigued? And for many people in your organization, they're probably juggling additional personal stuff that is getting in the way. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because maintaining morale in this new normal really puts a lot of pressure on folks to be a little more conscious of what's happening with the individuals that you're working with and the people that you're coming into contact with on a routine basis. And I'd like to say it's not just your business folks and the business community and your business family that you're working with, but it's also your people who reside in your house, who cohabitate with you. It's a little stressful for them. And also your communities that you serve, that you're connected with. Everybody's feeling pretty stressed. So the new normal is here, and I want to talk a little bit about that because over the next couple of briefings, both this briefing and the next briefing, we're going to really kind of focus on some of the shifts and some of the changes and some of the accommodations that are going to have to be dealt with and really really addressed as we move forward. And then how are we recommending that people who are managing teams of folks leading organizations, how are you applying a different set of leadership principles that you may or may not have used in the past, particularly, servant leadership principles that are really called for right at this particular point in time, because people are struggling quite hard right at this moment, and I don't anticipate that anything is going to get any better anytime soon. How are you investing in your team's well-being? How are you working to build team resilience? How do you operationalize a team support system? And how do you leverage and expand the use of touch points with your folks? And, when we talk about the new normal, and we've been prepping folks in these briefings to get prepared for this moment, but many of the states are starting to relax their work from home and shut down situations. They're starting to reopen segments of the economy, and yet social distancing has to continue. And this is a really important concept because everybody knows that we all feel a little frazzled. Everybody needs a haircut or wants to go out and throw a barbecue, and every extrovert I know wants a big fat hug. But the plain fact is that we're not out of the woods yet, and so making sure that we know that contact, when we come into contact with other folks, is going to look different. Masks have to be a part of it. Somebody said to me yesterday, the handshake is dead. And I know that people have tried to take that stance before, but this is a more compelling business case where handshakes are certainly a vector for transmission. So people are looking at door handles differently. They're going to ask you about cleaning protocols that you're putting in place if you've asked them to return to a physical location. Anybody who wants to get a hug can't get a hug right now, and physical contact has to be avoided. So there's still a big recommendation that whoever can work from home should continue to work from home. And this is for the foreseeable future, folks. And any business that thinks that they're going to be able to go back to something that is more traditional, and really should be rethinking that, because the likelihood that there's going to be additional events in the future is really quite high. And personal lives and professional lives, they are fully integrated. We are seeing people without makeup. We're seeing people dressing down. We're seeing people who look like they've been in prison for a while. I was leading a meeting with some clients the other day, and they're all on strike. They're not shaving. They're not, their haircuts look, all the guys' haircuts look kind of like prison, framework. So it is really interesting how people are responding to this. Never has there been a time where leading with heart, is really the best way forward. The more that you understand that when you're leading a group of people right now, when you're leading an organization, you need to serve those people. They have never needed you more. And this is really important when we're thinking about morale. You've got a vital role to play, both with checking in with people on a routine basis, setting up a process for doing check-ins. We'll talk about the fact that it doesn't all have to come from you, but they're still reliant on you for information. Although, the tone has changed. There's, for many, many, many locations, for many geographies, there is a little bit less hysteria, there's a little bit less chaos, there's a little bit less confusion. But now we're moving into a place where people can accommodate jokes more, they can accommodate a more relaxed, informal attitude. So really allowing people to come into a conversation and be a part of that conversation a little bit differently. You can change the tone, and that's going to be really important. Decisive decision making is still the watchword of the day, because folks want to know, and you're going to get questions. We're watching individuals really kind of struggle with questions relating to everything from how are you maintaining cleaning routines, to am I going to lose my job and get laid off when the PPP runs out, to what do you mean I can't come back into the office? So really showing caring, proactive, realistic planning, and being honest with people about things. This is really, really important. But the other reality that every single person is going to be facing, and why remote work has to be part of your landscape in the future, is because if you haven't done so already, you need to have a moment with your team where you're asking some hard questions. If you're the leader, what if you get sick? Who's going to continue things forward? And what are you going to do if key personnel get sick on your team, or if there is an outbreak with your team, or if you have clients or people that you serve, people that you do business with, that get sick, and how is that going to impact? And this is a reality, folks. The reality is, as soon as we start relaxing some of the current shutdown procedures, and we start opening things up, then people will get sick, and that has to be part of your planning process. And because we're having these types of hard conversations, investing in your team's well-being is really a priority right at this particular point in time. And when I think of, our team people, it extends far beyond just the folks who actually work in my organization and work with me directly, but my partners. This means the folks who have been in our client portfolio for a long time. How are we checking on them, and checking on them on a routine basis, keeping our fingers on the pulse of not only our team as a group, but also individual team members. But, one of the things we've talked about in these forums, these briefings, is people are going to remember how they were treated. And so the more that you can reach out to folks and help them, the more that you can include them in the process, the more that you can find out how they're doing, so that as you build your operating plan, you have some sort of a sense of, are projects going to go? Aren't they going to go? What are you going to require of people? And how are you going to build well-being into your daily routines with the people that you work with? Do you have identified sources, tools, and partners who can help? Very often there are state resources or government resources. We're talking about in the state of Rhode Island, for example. I'm tied into part of our client base is the medical community, the state of Rhode Island is working with the local hospital here. They have a mental health hotline that's available for folks. And there are also local gyms and yoga studios that are doing online briefings and online classes that they're allowing healthcare workers and other essential workers to kind of do drop-ins on. So it's like, identify the resources and the tools and different partners who you can help. We know a lot of folks who are strategic partners who work together to provide their expertise, whether it's the restaurant community that are providing meals for first responders and a lot of essential workers, but groups of people who are coming together and figuring out ways to partner and do it in a way that you can use your expertise not only for good, but to be able to strengthen those relationships so that further on down the road, it's going to be easier for you to be able to continue doing business with folks. Talking about it early with your people and often so that you normalize things, because this is an important concept. Mental health, well-being has always been such a personal territory, and some people are going to be more comfortable and some people less comfortable talking about it. But the more you can open up about your own struggles and your sort of everyone I'm talking to at this point is actually going through a certain amount of roller coaster. So how are we really keeping in touch with people? And that means, giving people the privacy when they need it, but also not letting them go dark. And one of the things we've talked about in these forums is the fact that people can go dark very, very quickly. And so making sure that you use team resources, respecting relationships, and getting people to talk to each other and watching out for each other. And then showing discretion and maintaining people's confidences, because right at this point in time, you're going to probably see things from people that you haven't seen before. And we're finding that, in the environments that we're working in right at this point in time, because there is such an uptick in video conferencing, we are in each other's homes. We're getting privy to, we're getting privileged conversation with folks who are juggling family issues or childcare issues or other family member issues, and it's hard. So just being there for people is going to be really important. And then, how are you working to build your team resilience? And this is going to be very important, because every indication is that COVID is going to be with us for a minimum of 12 to 24 months. And so assessing where you can bend and where you can't bend, and then setting expectations accordingly and being honest with people about what you need from them, and then working with them so that if they're able to deliver some of those things, that you can figure out what can you do within your organization, within the team, and do it in a way that is as fair and equitable as possible for folks. Getting group input as much as possible. And then never has there been a time for honesty, honest information, clear information, and giving people feedback on their performance, and also acknowledging emotions. This is also a time period, folks, that for those of you who are leaders, pushing decision-making down to the lowest possible level, because remember, if you're asking people to work in a remote environment, then they are independent decision makers. And so the more that you can push that decision-making capability and empower people to make those decisions within the confines of job expectations and what the job requirements are, and then knowing when to push, knowing when to back off, giving people leeway, but at the same time, not being afraid to hold them accountable, but doing it with compassion. And if somebody is suddenly doing things that they don't normally do, checking in with them to find out what the behaviors are that are driving, what are the circumstances that are driving the outcomes and driving the changes in somebody's performance. And then, one of the things that we're also suggesting to organizations is that they're inserting team give back opportunities. We have a lot of organizations right now that are feeling really disconnected. And so we've set up team give back moments where the team is working together to do everything from, there's one group that's doing story time for everybody's kids. There's another group that is doing meal share within their geographies. We've got other folks that are just doing, daily check-ins with vendor partners or client partners, just to share expertise in a way that really is helpful, and recognizing that there are lots of people in need. And then the other thing that we're preparing people for is how do you continue to prep your people to be able to pivot quickly, because we really don't know what's going to happen next. And that means operationalizing a team support system, because you can't do this on your own. You have to deputize. And that means involving the entire group so that you're getting them to work together, you're getting them paired together and checking in with each other. And then talking through things, verbalizing examples, and making it normal so that people can acknowledge what's going on, but then figuring out ways to pull your group together so that you can feel like a team. One of the things that we've certainly seen, and we've suggested to several of our clients, is they're doing composite team photos where people are pulling together a message where everybody's holding a word sign from their individual locations, or they're doing Zoom calls together and taking pictures of it, or they're doing things that will allow them to be able to interact as a group, talk together as a group, come up with a deliverable that's done as a group, and doing it in a way that people can actually feel part of the process. And then finally, it's about leveraging and expanding your touch points. And this means that, really utilizing all of your emotional intelligence capabilities to watch for indicators, from your team individuals, the people that you work with, folks in your community. Are you noticing changes in behavior, meeting attendance? Suddenly someone's not showing up anymore. When you talk to them, there's a shift in their tone, because you need to remember your role as a leader in these circumstances. Mission control. In a typical remote work situation, a remote leader, somebody who is leading a remote organization, by definition is going to have access to more information, and really be the person who can potentially move something forward because they know someone, or they have access to someone, or access to a resource that an individual team member may not. So the more you can appreciate that you're the master connector, the social director, you're inviting people, requiring people to engage with each other, and you're working to remove barriers but keep people informed and keep on top of things. And then how are you integrating social time? And we're talking about both group as well as individual social time wherever you can, whether that's at the beginning of a meeting, whether that's actually scheduling some sort of social gathering, whether it's a breakfast meeting together, just a coffee moment, you know, a water cooler moment, virtual water cooler moment, but actually going through that process and scheduling it. And then the other thing that we're suggesting to all of our colleagues, our friends, as well as our clients is, how do you expand the circle whenever possible and invite others to participate with purpose? So we have some programs with individuals that are in remote team situations. And what we're doing is we're inviting special guests to come in and address the group, so that the group is not just, you know, talking to themselves, which is an important part of the process, but that we're also inviting other people to participate, to come in and whether that's senior leadership within an organization, whether that's outside experts, but we're inviting other people in so that we can have an expanded conversation, and it just feels like a little fresh piece of you know, socialization, but it's also kind of nice because you get a different perspective and a different point of view, which is really important. How do you maintain those routines and show consistency? Because that's going to be really important. These touch points become more and more and more vital for folks, and they depend on them. You know, it's something that gives them some feeling of normalcy, and that's going to be really important. So with that, I'm going to stop presenting, and I'm going to go to the group and say to the group, is there anybody who has any questions or any comments about anything that that they'd like to throw out to the group that I could possibly give them comment on. And Bobby Carlton, thanks very much for being with the group today. And the question is, I haven't really thought about talking with my team about what happens if I get sick. I don't want to worry them or have them dwell on potential problems. And I totally get it, Bobby, because on one hand, it feels like, geez, I have to protect them, but also it's such a downer, right? It's such a difficult conversation to have. And yet it will be a more difficult circumstance as social distancing starts to be relaxed, as the economy starts opening up, as people are coming back out into the world and having contact with each other. Every indication is that there will be an uptick in COVID cases, and so not talking about it and simply letting it happen, and then it's a surprise for someone, is actually more difficult for them, particularly in remote work situations, because if you're bringing people together in a remote team and you're having candid conversations with them, at least you can do it in a proactive manner. So you can pick the time, you can choose the tone, you can present the topic in a compassionate and a compelling way. And if you have done your groundwork and you have really good trust with your people, then it's a conversation that, while it might be difficult, you get to candidly say, listen, I don't want this to happen. We're going to talk about all the ways that we're going to prevent this from happening. But in the event, I, respect you folks enough and care about you enough and care about the company and care about our team enough that I want to have that conversation so that we know what our plan of action is, so that we can keep moving forward without skipping a beat. And so we can also make sure that we support that person through the process, because we don't want them to feel even more isolated if they're struggling with something. So I know it's a difficult conversation, but I want to, keep reminding folks, one of the things we've talked a lot about in these forums is the fact that in remote work situations, people get really squirrely, and in the absence of information, they start making stuff up. So it's really important that you have those hard conversations, because at least people can wrap their mind around it, and at least they have some sense of how things are going to proceed. And if something does occur, then there's a course of action that's already been decided. And Carrie Fristow, thanks so much, Carrie, for your question. Have you heard from any introverts who are actually concerned about going back to the office because they're not sure how it will feel? Great question. And one of the things I would say to you is that there's going to be two things. You've got a whole subset of people who are going to discover that they hated their commute, and they really hate their commute. And they don't want to go back to the office because they've figured out this work from home thing. They figured out this remote work thing, and they don't think it's so bad. And not only that, there's a lot of indicators that people who have navigated this situation well and were well positioned from a technological point of view and have been able to execute on their job, they're going to push back if they're not allowed to continue to have the remote work option. So employers are going to have to be prepared for their justification for not allowing people to do this, particularly when there is the real possibility that things could go through limited shutdowns in the future. So, this goes back to that resiliency. And then to your point, Carrie, that whole thing of introverts, I would say that there are introverts who are if you're going to bring people back into the office, and we're certainly going to talk about this in next week's briefing. It's like, how do you bring people back together? How do you bring them back in? And I think that this is going to be a really interesting concept, because folks who were quiet before might actually have been a little bit more social in these virtual environments because they've been empowered to be this way. And when they go back into the office, how are you going to keep them engaged? How are you going to continue to gain their input and make sure that they're incorporated? And again, are you going to go back to the old ways and just abandon all the lessons that you've learned? So this is going to be part of the discussion that you have to have with yourself if you're a solo manager, or with your managers and supervisors and senior leaders in your organizations. There's a lot of folks at very senior levels we're having these conversations with who are struggling with this stuff. It is a real dilemma, and we're going to have to be hands-on, and we're going to have to think about it, and we're going to have to really figure out ways to invite people back in without necessarily abandoning all of the lessons learned, because our new normal doesn't look like the old normal. It looks remarkably different. Kate, we have Kate Morrison. How do you schedule in those deliberate check-ins for morale purposes while keeping in mind meeting fatigue? Yeah, everybody is Zoomed out or Microsoft Teamed out, videoed out. Everybody is clearly on overload as far as things go. I think, part of this is you can do different types of channels. Like sometimes you might actually be using the phone. Sometimes it might be a text message. Sometimes it might be something where somebody's actually, somebody in the organization was actually sending cards through the mail to people. So I've had one organization that has made an effort to do scheduled check-ins with a group of 130 people. They start from the top, they go all the way down to the bottom, and then they turn around and go back up to the top again. And during that rotation, they're asking each of those individuals, what's your preferred channel? So some people prefer email check-ins, some people prefer text check-in, some people prefer phone check-ins, some people prefer video check-ins. So I think, Kate, part of what you got to do is you meet people where they live. I think you also, my recommendation to all my folks who are actually all my clients who are struggling with this is I'm saying to them, use all the channels. It doesn't always have to be video. But you do want to get some sort of video as part of your solution. But at the same time, you shouldn't be forcing just video as the option. Sometimes maybe a phone call, sometimes some of the other stuff. So a little bit of everything. Use every channel at your disposal and use it very strategically. Any other questions from anybody? Great. Well, I think, first of all, I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming into this session. We work very hard to try and give you practical information and things that are actionable, and also to give you a real sense of what we're seeing with our clients, as well as helping you to internalize techniques that you can take back to your workspace and utilize with your folks. I just want to say thanks so much to all of you for coming on today. Really appreciate it and giving us some time. And just want to a big shout out, Julie Silvestri. Thanks so much. Not only a great strategic partner, but really a great person who has been experiencing this instant remote work and doing a great job with it. So thanks very much, Julie, for coming in today. We just want to let folks know that we hope that they come back to see us next week. Next week's briefing is going to be on how do you bring those people in, both the extroverts and the introverts, and what does it look like. And we wish everybody a great weekend. Please be well, be safe. They may be relaxing the social distancing rules in your area, but we still want you to take care of yourself. So thanks a lot, folks. Please take care. Great to see you.